Hello and welcome. Well, today we're going to discuss the spy bill, as somebody would say, the eavesdrop bill, whatever you want to term it. But you see, there are two arguments here. Number one, are you thinking about your personal security or are you thinking about your social security? So would I say, well, I prefer, my personal security more than that of the national security, because indeed they are just listening to people's telephone conversation, looking into their postal packages or emails, whatever it is, to protect the nation as a whole. And that's where the arguments are. There are those who say, no. I want my personal safety, to hell with the nation. And there are those who are saying, no, I'd rather you listen to my calls if it's going to save the nation. Where do you stand? Then we move up to the next level, as in, do you actually trust those who are going to listen into your calls? And after they've listened into your calls, what they do? We move up again to say that, why do you want to listen to my calls in any way? What have I done? And so there's all this going on. But the bottom line is it our personal security or national security, which comes first? My name is Nana Sakwa. And this is PM Express, and I'm sure by the end of this conversation, I would know if I'd rather my personal security or national security, and I have just the gentleman to explain that to me. Don't move, we're coming back. Well, thank you very much for staying. And this is one of those things that, as a nation, you always need to sit down, enjoy, and come to a consensus. Well, there's a bill in Parliament which, when passed, allows national security to, at a phone call, get some people to listen into all your communication, be it electronic or a letter that you may be sending to somebody. If they have reasons to suspect that, look, this is of a threat to the nation, then why not listen in? There's another school of thought that's saying, now listen, I don't want you listening to my conversations. That's my privacy. And until you have proven that I am dangerous to the state, leave me be. Where do you stand as a person? You'd rather, the government listen into your conversation to protect the whole nation, or you rather they put the whole nation at risk and not listen into your conversation. With me in the studios, my learned brother, Kofi Bento, Vice President Imani, and he's been quite vocal about this. James Agalga will join us, Deputy Minister for Interior will join us on the phone. Obviously, he's in charge of Interior, and he wants to listen to your phone calls so that he can protect the nation. That's if he suspects you of doing something bad. But Kofi, you preach patriotism. I know you, one of the few patriots of our time. Now here we are is a bill that allows national security to, listen to Ben Atif or, Ben Umar, just to make sure that they are not getting people in town, and then you or I will be safe. And you're saying that you're not quite sure. You'd rather your personal security or your personal protection than national protection.
Right. You've made a huge assumption. And the assumption is that listening or giving government the power to listen to everybody will lead to national security. We have a history. The Soviet Union, and many of the communist countries, they did this routinely. They had people spy on people. They tapped phones. They did everything. Even developed countries like Germany, they had East Germany. They did all these things. What happened? The very fact of the presence of those laws led to a huge insecurity across those countries. That very fact, that's what we call police state. When you have a situation where your government constitutes itself into some kind of big brother looking over your shoulders and everything you do, we have history to show that that in itself created huge national insecurity. And indeed, it didn't save anybody from any terrorism or whatever. So that assumption, to begin with, is not entirely accurate, that government having the power to listen to everybody leads to increase in national security. And that indeed the opposite is true. And then you are saying that it's going to prevent the Bin Atefs and co from, maybe hurting the rest of us. again, one of the things we were saying today when we were having this discussion was that criminals, unfortunately, are always one step ahead of the law. And if you block this, they are going to use the other way. So indeed, assuming that having that power is going to stop criminals is a big stretch for so many reasons. One, even this law does not cover private couriers. It covers the public systems and the telcos. It doesn't cover private couriers. And then also there is technology which is unassailable. Today in the US is one of the most intrusive countries in the world, regardless of their freedoms and whatever it is, you know. But there's so many technologies that you can breach. And those technologies are getting more and more sophisticated, okay? So truth is that having that power really does not give you any leverage against real criminals. What it does is gives you a lot of room to obstruct the lives of law-abiding citizens who will not take any sophisticated, you know, approach to protecting their privacy, all right? Then there is what is called the real potential of abuse. Okay, the potential of abuse is this thing that says that whenever anybody has the power to do one thing, they are going to use it to do any other thing that the power allows them to do, even if that was not what's intended. And today I give the example of the procurement bill. Okay, the procurement law, actually, the act. We passed the Procurement Act, and the reason why we passed the Procurement Act was because government contracts were just being given to cronies and friends, and everything was all over the place, and the corruption was terrible. So we said we're going to pass a law that organizes how government contracts have to be given. We give all kinds of rules and regulations and institutions and whatever you have to go through and spelled it all out. And then we created one small pinhole, a pinhole that says that, well, for special reasons and the extreme circumstances, when for some reason you cannot do what is spelled out in the rest of the law, use what is called sole sourcing, and they define the rules under that and everything. And I made the point today that where water can pass, air can pass, and air will pass. In our own history, we took that small pinhole and we have made nonsense of the whole Procurement Act to the point where today, the crimes that were being committed in the past, which we sought to, you know, make illegal, the law that is supposed to make it illegal has become the law with which the crime is committed. And I'm using those words advisedly because you have situations where people even give contracts, they pay and pay over the contract sum, and then they go back to try and do the paperwork using the procurement law to cover themselves. It's just telling you the nature of human beings, especially Ghanaians. Okay? So that tells you that when you create a law which has such a wide probability and potential for abuse, given what we are and what we've done before, it will be abused. And who will suffer? Like I said, politicians first, journalists next, the rest of us.
You've been too categorical about it being abused.
Yes.
Well, how can you be that sure that it will be abused? Because, I mean, Kofi, as we sit here, I'm sure there are still systems where, you know, people's phones are tapped. I'm sure you, by all means, your phone should be tapped. There's no way they will leave your phone free. I'm sure your phone is tapped. It's just that you haven't said anything. So
because I don't have anything to hide from them.
So they haven't said anything.
But there's something there. You see, maybe they've tapped my phone, they've tapped your phone and whoever's phone. It's illegal today.
So could this be a law to sort of you know, a law to guard something that's already in motion?
That's exactly my point, and I'm not making any bones about it. Today, as we speak, we know what national security does. They tap phones. And you know something? When they caught Benjilo, you know how they caught him? They opened his postal packet. Somebody mailed something to him. They opened it. And they saw it was drugs. They used it against him. He's in jail. Which means they've been opening postal packets all this time. They've been tapping our phones, we know. But you know, Nana, if somebody taps your phone and you catch him, or for some reason it becomes public, today, because it's illegal, you can sue him and sue whoever is around him and punish him for it. Okay? And then move to the next level. There are laws in this country. Okay? The telecommunications, something, postal regulations, whatever, the anti-terrorism law.
If you suspect your phone is being tapped, I mean, what do you do? I mean, is there any way you can?
It's difficult because these are covert operations. Me, sometimes my phone is there and it's warm. So I know they are tapping. But, well, you hear what I'm telling Cecilia. and you hear what I'm telling my mother, and you hear what I'm telling my pastor, so you take it. And the other things that I'm saying, well, fine. So it's difficult. But if for some reason it comes out, it becomes public knowledge, or, somehow somebody, goes and then, you can take them on, you will be able to under the laws, because it will be an illegal thing they are doing.
Okay.
This law makes what they are doing, which is illegal, to be legal. And the point I was making before we came in was that there are laws that allow them to tap your phone legally. Today. There are laws that allow them to open postal packets legally. Today. In fact, there are so many laws that even seriously, strictly taken, put us all at risk. But you see, somehow we've managed with those a bit. And the main thing that has kept us from the extreme is that they are required, if they want to do it properly, to go to a judge to obtain permission. I am aware that telcos were approached with requests for tapping. And they said, no. Why no? I'm a multinational. You can't do that. It's against my rules, and then you have to go to this and that and that. It was difficult for them, even though the telcos were here in Ghana. And one of the things that they were told is that, well, if you had a law that covers me and says that you have a right to come and put this thing and tap somebody's phone, then I'll allow you. So some of those hiccups or some of those impediments in their way made it difficult for them to do something that they would like to do. They are doing in part already. So this law is supposed to open those floodgates. Okay. But indeed, what is the risk? Okay. Nana, liberty is a crucial thing. And it's like, you don't miss it, or you don't appreciate it until you lose it. And anybody who has been to jail will tell you. Okay. And I was explaining that in crafting a constitution, we give certain rights which are fundamental. One of them is liberty. Nothing at all should interfere with that, because slaves committed suicide simply because they had lost their liberty. There are people in prison who, if they get the chance, they'll commit suicide because they've lost their liberty. And some of them are in for 10 years. When they put a prisoner in a jail or something, they take everything away from him that he can use to hurt himself. Why? Because a person losing his liberty, for some people, is worse than losing your life. And if you bring it down the scale, none of us would feel completely human if we knew that we had no liberty to have secure communications with anybody.
Kofi, let me, I don't even know if it's a diversion or, but let me just, how come there's nobody pro-government who is vocal against this, but you find people, I don't want to use against government, but those who are against this bill are not necessarily, in government. How can everybody in government not see anything wrong about this, and everybody other side think, oh no, this can't be right? Is it because those in opposition may think, they'll listen in on our calls?
I will hold a bit of brief for those in government. You haven't heard all of them. Indeed, on the contrary, the people you've heard who are defending this bill are people who are paid to do so. Okay, so James is the Deputy Minister of Interior. Okay, and the rest of them who have to toe the line have been whipped into line. Okay. However, you should realize that you don't see a broad-based, support for this bill. You are hearing the people who are pushing it, but you don't get that broad-based. So I don't think that even the people within the NDC are necessarily, happy with this, because I have told them that the day they lose power, this bill will become their worst nightmare. You don't make laws like this and assume that you'll be in power forever. You are handing your enemy a dagger. And with this, they are going to hurt you. So I think they are quite aware of that. So sometimes it beats me why politicians do what they do. All right. And again, you see, history is replete with examples of these things, which is why in constitutional governments, when we move from kings and people who had absolute power, one of the fundamental pillars of constitutions or laws that regulate the exercise of power is that the exercise of power must be limited. Everywhere, constitutions are for limiting the exercise of power. Regulations, rules, because you have state power, state resources, and if you leave a human being alone, they will misuse it. Now, why do we have that pessimistic view? Because history has taught us that to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And like I said, where water can pass, air can pass, and air will pass. So you approach law with the mind that somebody may come who intends to use this to do evil. You don't approach it as if angels are going to implement this, so it's all going to be good, and nobody is going to misuse it. It will be misused.
Is it a matter of trust, or is it a matter of the law itself? Is it that we don't trust the people who are going to operate the law, or the law itself is just not right?
It's a matter of learning over 4,000 years of history that when you are giving power to somebody, especially under the social contract where we all give power to one person, you have to limit him in his use of that power. And that is how the world has developed, and everybody is moving towards democracies. Even where you have kingdoms, take England, where they have a king, they have given up that sovereignty to the people in a parliamentary, monarchy arena. So it's not so much because people are bad in government. It's just that human beings have the tendency, to misuse things that they can misuse. And in constitutional arrangements, we have to limit the powers and tell people exactly where they stop. And when it comes to fundamental human rights, you don't mess with them. The only people within the social contract of a democracy who are allowed to tamper with your human rights are judges. And they don't do that easily. You have to go before him or her. You have to make a case, sometimes in opposition to another person who is making the case. They will listen, they'll look at the law, and then they may take your liberty away from you if it is in the interest of the wider society. And we still have that today. That is still being done today. Nobody apart from them must be given that power to tamper with what is your fundamental human right. And you must know that the Constitution doesn't give us those rights. Those rights, we have them for being born. God gave it to us. The Constitution affirms them, which is why when you take them away, you start undermining the whole of society. So it's important. It's not because people are bad per se. Sometimes there's a saying that you must keep a righteous man righteous, which is to say somebody may be good, but if you give him too much room, he starts getting tempted and he starts doing bad things. It's like, let me just digress a bit. If you are the security officer who is supposed to use this law, and you have to use it for the right purposes, national security, whatever it is, but one day you realize that you have this other problem and you like to listen in on the next phone call, and you have the power to do it, the law covers you. Even if it turns out to be wrong, no problem. You can do it for 48 hours. You go and do it for 30 hours, then you stop. Start getting the appetite for it. After a while, you'll be listening to Nana. Every 2 days, you listen for 30 hours. Then you break. Then you listen for 30 hours. Then you break, And then it becomes a whole systemic problem.
Suspect he's trying to chase your girlfriend.
Oh, the people do things so.
Let me acknowledge Mr. James Agalga, who's the Deputy Minister for Interior. And he's going to be, this is well within his jurisdiction. James, you're welcome to the show.
Hello?
Hello, James. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
And I thank you so much for joining me. My listeners will save me because in the last 2 days, all government representatives have refused my invitation and my viewers have been bashing me. So I'm glad you're joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm not in the position to say whether government communicators have declined your invitation.
They have, and my viewers have been bashing me that I'm being too biased. It doesn't matter how much I tell them that I'm trying to get home. So I'm glad you've joined me because this is a very important matter which I think we need to let people understand so nobody gets the wrong end of it. The general public think that, no, this law could be misused. Somebody would listen to, a rival's phone call or, a political enemy's phone call. That's what people are worried about. How do we guard against giving such authority to a security personnel?
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk on the program.
Sure.
And first of all, it is important to state categorically that everything government seeks to do is in the interest of ensuring that our national security is preserved so that you and I can continue to live in peace, that our security is guaranteed and is not breached by anybody. Remember also that we find ourselves in a sub-region which is very turbulent. I mean, not too long ago, only a few weeks back, our neighbor to the east, the Republic of Burkina Faso, came under attack by terrorists. Many on a number of occasions has been attacked by terrorists.
Yep.
Nigeria has had its fair share of terrorism. Boko Haram has unleashed a lot of atrocities on the people of Nigeria. And so Ghana cannot be, a country that pretends that we are an island in the face of all these troubling situations which have plagued our neighbors. And therefore, as a very responsible government, we have been looking at ways of safeguarding our peace and security. One of the ways by which government thinks we can guarantee the peace and safety of our people is through the interception of postal packets and telecommunications messages bill.
I guess my next question
presented to Parliament, not too long ago. The bill was laid and has accordingly been referred to the Committee for Defense and Interior, and the committee at the moment has opened the floodgates for the general public to send memoranda with the hope that they can make informed inputs once views are collated from the public before reports are put before the plenary.
James, let me
debate.
James, let me come in here.
Stage of the second reading.
James, let me come in here. I agree with you about the sub-region, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, all the way to Ghana. But then, so are you going to listen to people you only suspect, or is it going to be random picking? How do you decide if this guy, is a potential bomber or?
Come again, please. Can you take it up again? Your voice is a bit faint for me.
Yeah, let me try again. I was trying to find out, how do you decide whose package to open and whose phone call to listen to?
I'll come to that.
Okay.
I'll just try to build a point.
Okay.
And so, like I said, the government is of the firm belief and conviction that the interception of postal packets and telecommunication messages bill is a way of dealing with the issue of terrorism. Now, apart from terrorism, there are other very serious issues that the bill seeks to tackle, like organized crime, money laundering, narcotic trafficking, identity theft. And generally, the bill also seeks to ensure that our national security is not breached in any way. Other issues such as armed robbery have also been catered for, etc.
So
the point I'm just trying to make is that the law we are looking at, the proposed law, which is in the form of a bill at the moment, has its foundation in the fundamental law of the land, which is the Constitution. And in order that we, of course, educate our listeners, for the avoidance of doubt, I will refer you to Article 18 of the Constitution. And that provision is very, very, very clear.
James,
18 clause 2.
James, you've been very clear, but you haven't told me what the targeting would be. What would we make you wake up this morning and say, no, I have to listen to Nana Ansakwa's calls?
Sorry?
What will let you wake up one morning and decide that let me listen to Nana Ansakwa's calls?
Oh, I'm sorry. Where I am is a bit noisy, so can you take it? Can you repeat?
I was saying that what would trigger you to say that let me listen to Nana Ansakwa's calls or Kofi Bentil's calls this morning, let me monitor his calls? What will happen for you to do that?
If I don't take time to explain.
No, I think you've been very clear, honestly.
Explain the import of the bill.
No, that I've gotten you, and I agree with you.
Question.
No, James, James, I agree with you. We don't have anything against the law. We just like how the law will be implemented is what we're trying to. The import is good. National security, I don't think anybody is against it. It's just that how do you decide whose calls to listen to and whose package to listen?
Nana, you use Nana call as an example.
Yeah.
The point is that Nana calls tend telephone conversation will not be intercepted if Nanako is not reasonably suspected to be engaged
Okay, so that's it. So
in
reasonable suspicion.
terrorism, which have the potential to undermine the security of Ghana.
But there are present laws for that.
Conversation will not be intercepted if there are no reasonable grounds to suspect that Nanako is engaged in, say, narcotic trafficking.
But
nobody would intercept Nanako's conversation if we don't have reasonable grounds to suspect that Nanako is engaged in acts of piracy.
Okay, but
he's engaged in organized crime such as money laundering.
Okay, James,
and so there are grounds upon which interception can be done. A request for interception can be put before a judge, and for the judge to issue a warrant to that effect. It is not a blanket, if you like, a discretion which doesn't come with fetters, like Nanado sought to create the impression in his reaction to the president's State of the Nation address, because he described the bill as a spy bill. And I have said that that description is inappropriate because the bill has a lot of safeguards in it.
Okay,
for instance,
James,
interception can be done, one must apply to a judge, a high court judge.
Okay.
You must convince the judge that there is need for this interception to be done in the interest of our national security. So you don't just intercept everybody's communication.
Then
the import of the bill.
Okay, James, hold on for me. James, hold on 1 second. James, are you there, James? Hello, James.
Hello.
Okay, hold on for me just 1 second, please. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello.
Hello, James. Can you hear me, and can you hold for me just a second? Hello, James. James, can you hear me? Have I still got James on the line?
Hello?
Hello, James, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I just want you to hold on for me. I have Kofi Bentil in the studio, so if you can hold on for me just a little while. But I want him to understand so that I can put the question to Kofi. James, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Now, he's saying that there's no panic because you need to go to a judge and the judge will say, yes, for A, B, C, D reasons you presented to me, listening to Kofi's calls or listening to Nana Sako's calls. So then, what's the panic?
This is the panic. That provision that you need to go to a judge is present in the anti-terrorism bill, is present in the bill on postal packets and whatever. It's present in a number of bills that allow the state to listen to your telephone conversations, to intercept your packages, everything. But you have to go to a judge. Indeed, in this particular bill, it is replete with all those things. You have to go to a judge, you have to sign this, you have to give this reason and that. Then they insert something in section 4.3 that says that the National Security Coordinator can give an oral instruction to a security operative to listen to your call, and they can go ahead and do that for 48 hours, and then they have to go to a judge to more or less, get permission for what they've already done.
To continue or to stop?
To continue or to stop, 48 hours. They don't tell us whether it has to happen over the weekend or whatever. So what it really means that you can go for 48 hours and stop on the 30th hour, wait for a while, go again, okay? And the question is, why would you put this there when every other place requires you to see a judge? Why is this necessary? Because in this country, you can get a judge at midnight on Sunday, and he will be able to give you the permission if the situation is exigent. Now, this is that window, same as what they've done in the procurement bill. Nana?
Could be an emergency.
What creates an emergency that makes you need to do this and you can't get a judge? And I've asked James so many times that
coup d'etat?
An eminent coup d'etat, and you just found out. And if it is as serious as a coup d'etat, and most of the judges live around in the city, you can find them and for 48 hours, all right? So the question is, what will create this situation? They have not defined it. And you see, you end up in a situation like we've ended up with the procurement bill, where now everything will go through this one small loophole. Everything becomes an emergency. So we are saying, just as it has been up till now. And the question was, what is the exigent? What is it? We are so confident in this country, indeed our government is, that without any new laws like this, they've brought 2 terrorist convicts or terrorist suspects or whatever into this country. And they are confident that under our present laws, we are able to keep them okay. So what makes them think that the rest of us are so dangerous, they need a law like this? For which reason they can't find a judge? So I'm saying, find the judge. Take this thing out. Keep the thing as it is. We've been doing this for all these years. We've not had a problem. Why introduce this particular clause that leaves it wide open for abuse? Especially when we know that you would abuse it.
James, I'm sure you heard that 48-hour window. Can you help us with that?
Yeah, hello.
Hello, James.
Yes, I've heard my brother's arguments, Bentel's arguments, that he seems to have a problem with the power of the National Security Coordinator.
That's right.
To, as it were, give oral instructions for interception, even without recourse to a judge. But what my good friend should realize is that that power itself comes with certain limitations and obligations. When for instance, the National Security Coordinator exercises his functions under 4.3, he would only exercise that function when there is the need for urgency.
Like what?
Like what?
You know, the modus
like
operandi of criminals and would-be criminals. Sometimes there is need for us to take very urgent steps to be able to intercept their communication. Time is usually of the essence. If you have
for 48
the
hours
between criminal gangs for purposes of preventing the commission of crime.
For
48 and so, because time is of the essence, this power has been vested in the security coordinator, so that as a matter of urgency, where we will not even have the luxury to approach a judge and move applications and for the judge to make rulings and issue warrants, you do the interception. But the law says that within 48 hours of the exercise of that function, without the warrant of a judge, you must proceed to the judge within 48 hours to confirm the interception. Now, what that provision says is that if you don't go to a judge for the confirmation within 48 hours, then the interception is unlawful. Once the interception is unlawful, you cannot use its content for proceedings in court or for any other purpose. If you do, under clause 10 of the same bill, you are liable to punishment up to a period of 10 years. So there is a deterrent element there to check the abuse that my good friend Bentel is so much worried about.
James, James, I'm going to take a quick break here and I'll come back and continue. But when I come back, I want to give us an example of what would be an emergency that we can find a judge in 2 days. So hold on 1 second. But when I come back, you give us an example of something that's going on that we cannot find a judge in 2 days, and therefore you're listening to some calls. So we're coming straight back. Well, this is getting very interesting, and 0560 800 000. This one says, Nana, the fact is most of the developed countries have this law in place, but yet some of us, the gurus in IT, bypass their so-called cyber securities and what you have. The bad guys are always ahead of security. So passing the bill or not will not do any good to the country's national security. What we need are and interrogate collection of data, recovery and investigate, just as in any crime or offense. Even if we have to pass the bill now, I don't think we are ready I don't think we are ready. We should study it well before doing so. Stephen Esa, computer forensic specialist and examiner. Well, I'm sure James would need your expertise on that. This one says, interesting bill. Interesting discussion. I'm just hoping that the worst sufferers of this bill, when passed into law, will be the current proponent of it. But my question is, if you are not a criminal and you are not up to malice, what's your worry? Security is priceless and we should be prepared to pay any price for it. However, Ghanaians must be offered the opportunity to have the right to information bill passed into law before any interruptions and invasion of their privacy of this magnitude in the name of national security. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. Peter Sakwa in Sunyane. This one says, what happens to emails, WhatsApp messages, Skype, and the rest?
All of them are at risk.
From the angle of terrorism and the rest, how sure is the Deputy Minister that phone calls is the only mode of communication? They should rather focus on surveillance. This is ending in Ankase. Let me catch another one here. 1 second. Nana, please, we are Ghanaians. We can't manage it. So don't let us sell our secrets to the outside world. These are some of the sentiments coming out from there. This one says, Nana, government should instead block the air we breathe rather than tampering with our basic necessities of freedom to privacy. This bill is anti-human, backward, and prehistoric. I shall saintly rise against this bill any day it's passed. This is Somalia from Winada. Let me come to you, then I'll go to James on the phone. But, you know, James is saying that, look, this is the Constitution actually says that, you know, it governs, tells you to protect national security.
Yes.
You know, and this is what they're doing.
Well, James says so. And he cites the part of the Constitution which I also cite. That is Article 18.1. Article 18.1 says that nobody's rights must be interfered with under no circumstance.
Not even at the cost of national security?
Except there are certain reasons, such as national security and for the defense of whatever, you know, they go through all that thing. You know, now, in the, you know, reading of it, it says that for that purpose, therefore, subsidiary laws may be passed, you know, to give effect to it. Now, the law is hierarchical. The Constitution is the fundamental law of the land. No law can be passed to derogate from the Constitution. So the Constitution gives you a right, says you have a right to life. Nobody can take your life without going through the due process of a court. Nobody can make a law that says that somebody can take your life without going through the due process of the law. So every subsidiary law, which is what is spelled out in 18.1, that has to be made to effect this constitutional provision, must not derogate from that provision. James and his people are making a law which takes away our constitutional right to privacy and gives unfettered power to people who can orally instruct somebody to just snoop on you and listen to every conversation between you and your mother, your wife, your children, and anybody. And you see, again, the potential for abuse. With all due respect to our security, you know, personnel, they themselves know that there are a few bad nuts amongst them. The police have arrested policemen who were in collusion with armed robbers before. Our Narcotics Control Board, we were all here when there were probes all over the place because some of them were involved in narcotics. Okay, you've had all kinds of situations where there's been collusion. All right, so you need to make sure that you don't give them.
Kofi, there's no perfect law. You can only tighten. So this is just to tighten. I don't think you can make an angelic or a heaven law. You just bring in some to sort of tighten the noose.
But that's exactly what we have now. So it says anybody can do whatever they want to do if you are the properly appointed person to do it. But if you're going to tamper with somebody's fundamental human right, such as jail the person or whatever, go to a judge, and then the judge will require you to give some reason why you're going to do this. Because it can never be that there's no reason for it. And it can never be that you are the only person who understands or knows why you must do what you are doing. That is the definition of tyranny, where one person decides that this person must be, you know, put in this situation, the other person must be put in that situation. You must have a reason why you're going to tamper with somebody's fundamental human right. So that's what we have. And you are allowed to do that. The problem with this law is 4.3, giving unfettered power. And you know, I was telling them this morning that there has been a test of this in a European Human Rights Court, where somebody took their government, took, court on that. And the court ruled clearly on this, and they agreed with me, that even though laws may be made that may tamper with your rights to liberty, for instance, those laws must be in accordance with the Constitution. And in accordance with the Constitution means, and I read, and I quote, it says, it must be compatible with the rule of law and must contain protection against arbitrary interferences. Note that. And the court held that it was contrary to the rule of law if the discretion granted was expressed in terms of an unfettered power. What it means is that if that discretion to do that essentially gave you power that did not require you to check with somebody else, unfettered means you don't have any limitation. Okay, so this law, which is in essence an unfettered power, and James is telling us that for 48 hours, then you have to go and get the permission. 48 hours, the damage has been done.
Okay, I have James on the phone, so let's find out if there's a scenario where, look, we can't wait for a judge. Let's go in now. Hello, James.
Hello.
Yeah, the education still continues, but we just want to find out, what situation would arise that, let's say, the whole of Monday, the whole of Tuesday, we are unable to get hold of any judge, but we have to go in and record or tap somebody.
Let me tell you something that is of importance to all of us and I guess our listeners.
Okay.
The law contemplates situations where there is the urgent need for you to act.
Like what?
And I am saying that time is of the essence. It
like
could
what?
even be in the night. It could be at 1 a.m.
6 a.m. you get the judge.
So at 6 6 a.m. why don't you see the judge to continue?
No, sorry. Can I make a point?
Sure.
When everybody goes to sleep, when Nana and Sako goes to sleep,
Sure.
Mr. Bento goes to sleep, our national security does not sleep. We keep vigil so that you can sleep soundly. Point I'm making is that whilst you are asleep, whilst the judges are asleep, when it becomes necessary for interception to be done, you will do the interception. The law is saying that in order that that discretion is not abused, within 48 hours of the interception, you must seek the confirmation of a judge. And that if you don't do that, then the interception becomes unlawful, and you cannot use the content of the interception for any purpose. If you attempt to use the content of an unlawful interception for any purpose, you commit a crime and you are liable to imprisonment for up to 10 years.
So, James,
that is the safeguard. But Nana, let me make a point. I've heard my brother Bento make his arguments, and his arguments seem to revolve around Article 18. He suggests that the subsidiary legislation we have passed is contrary to the right to privacy as enshrined in Article 18. I disagree with that interpretation of the provision. The provision is very clear. It comes with a caveat. And with your permission, let me take you through.
Sure.
18.2 says, no person shall be subjected to interference with the privacy of his home, property, correspondence, or communication, except, and my emphasis is on except, in accordance with law and as may be necessary in a free and democratic society for public safety or the economic well-being of the country, for the protection of health or morals, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of the rights of freedoms of others. And so the provision in the first part talks about the right to privacy, privacy to home, privacy to person, privacy to correspondence or communication. Then it goes on to create a caveat which says that except in accordance with law and as may be necessary in a free and democratic society for public safety or the economic well-being of the country, then you can intercept. So we are saying that this law comes about and is in tandem with the second part of Article 18, which creates the exception. So,
okay,
it is
James,
only in exceptional situations.
Okay, James, let me come in here before you continue because you may need this. This is in the 1984 case of Marlon versus the United Kingdom, where citizens sued his government. The court held that in accordance with law means that it must be compatible with the rule of law and it must contain protection against arbitrary interferences. So what Kofi is saying that if you give the power to the national security officer, he's now got arbitrary power. So between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., he can then decide that, look, this guy, he looks like a threat to me, tap it to his full call.
No, Nana. The authority cited by Bentel has been taken out of context. Remember that in the UK, the interception of postal packets and communication law was passed in 1985 after the decision in the Malone case. And it's subject to so clearly an act of parliament came into existence after that decision. And you know, acts of parliament will normally take precedence over decisions of courts. So in 1985, the UK adopted for itself a similar legislation that we are now proposing to adopt and have presented before Parliament.
So let me bring Kofi in here.
As far back as 1985, the UK adopted a similar legislation to the bill that we now have in place. And that law clearly took precedence over the decision that my good friend Bentel has just cited to support his argument.
Okay,
so the decision in Malone has been overtaken by the passage of the 1985 interception of postal packets and communication law in the UK.
Kofi, let me bring you here.
One important point that I need to make is that in our law, we are saying that, look, the power vested in the security coordinator to issue oral instructions without recourse to a court of law is problematic. But if you look at the UK legislation, the 1985 legislation, the power, that same function is vested in the Secretary of State for Home Affairs. Now, in that law, nowhere is mention made of the Secretary of State having to obtain a court warrant before he issues instruction for interception. So what is contemplated under our bill is an improvement on what is the case in the UK. Because we have made it the rule that before you intercept, you must obtain a warrant, except in extreme cases where time is of the essence.
Okay, James.
Then you have the national security coordinator coming to issue oral instructions.
Okay, James.
Which is very similar to the powers vested in the Home Secretary in the UK.
James,
so there is nothing unusual about the bill that we have in place, because similar legislations exist in the UK, in Kenya, in Uganda, in Nigeria, and other jurisdictions.
I'm going to take a break here, but we still haven't gotten the emergency, because assuming even if the incident hadn't at 1 a.m., I'm sure my viewers want to know by 6 o'clock in the morning, a judge should be up, and whoever is tapping into my phone call should have rushed to the judge to say, look, 6 hours ago I started recording him.
The interception must happen in a contemporaneous manner with the time the communication, it's being done.
No, but 48 hours, that's what we're wondering. If you, assuming by 12 a.m. every judge is asleep. So between 1 a.m.
What the bill is saying is that if you intercept, you see, after the interception, you have 48 hours within which to approach a judge to confirm the interception. Now, the consequence is that if you approach the judge within the 48 hours, the judge has the power to either confirm that the interception was a regular.
But why 48? Why 48 hours? Why not 6 hours?
No, it says 48 hours because we're looking at the circumstances, the overall circumstances, and what is reasonable.
Yeah, but so why not 6 hours? Because within 6 hours, you should find a judge. Whatever time it is in the day, within 6 hours, you should find a judge.
Well, Nana, these things are subjective. I would think that 48 hours is a reasonable time frame to operate.
So hold on for me. Hold on for me. Let me take a quick break and come back. Please hold on for me.
Very well.
A quick break and come back. Okay, so stay tuned, guys.
Okay.
Hello, this is Ben from Jasu. Good evening, Ben. Ben says, good evening, and I hope you're doing great. I'm fabulous. Great idea of the spy bill is the idea of the spy bill is great and laudable. But truth is, Ghana man will use it to abuse the rights of some citizens, especially those in opposition and their sympathizers. And at the end of the day, will cause chaos and mass disorder. What we need is the right to information bill. Let me take one more. This one says, politicians are gradually taking off our fundamental human rights. It will come to a time that freedom of worship will be taking of politicians. This is Sami in Brikum. If I am doing something dubious and suspected that my conversation is being tapped, I simply use someone else's line who is not a suspect at all and let the recipient of my call also use a different line, which is unsuspected. You did not add your name, but basically saying that this law will not stop anybody doing anything. Oh, this is a weird message. Let me take one more before I call. Hold on for me, James.
Okay.
Let me give you.
Yes.
James says that we have 4 minutes, so we have to really rush it through.
So let me quickly do something for James. James, when a law is passed or a case is held in 1984, that becomes law. So the 1985 UK law was actually crafted with Malone in mind, and they made sure that they took cognizance of the points that was made or that were made in this particular judgment. And you must appreciate that the UK does not have a constitution. The UK has a series of conventions, and things that they've, done over time. So there are very many layers, and ultimately there is parliamentary oversight, there's judicial oversight as well, and also ministerial oversight. And these laws are also there, which is why today, even though they have this kind of a law, you cannot arbitrarily tap somebody's line. Right now in the US, and the US is the most intrusive of all democracies when it comes to these things, you still cannot do these things even though they have similar laws, because there are other checks and balances. The point we are making here is this. One, we don't have all those deep checks and balances. Two, we cannot trust our people just like anybody cannot trust anybody, that they are going to be good all the time. This is still too open to abuse, and our experience is that it will be abused. We are not saying don't do your national security. You've been doing it anyway. We are simply saying the existing laws are enough. If you want to pass this particular law, don't do what is illegal, because when you leave this unfettered room for abuse, you're actually breaching the Constitution, which is why if this is passed, some of us will have to go and have the Supreme Court determine whether this does not breach Article 18. Article 18 says that it must be according to law. The subsidiary legislation must be subject to the Constitution. If it is not subject, to the extent that it is not subject, it is void.
James, let me give you 1 minute to round up for me, please.
Yes. Nana, I'll be very happy if my learned friend tests the, of course, constitutionality of the bill when it becomes a law. That way we would all expand the frontiers of the law. But Nana, having said that, what for me, I want to answer your question, quickly. Nana, I did say that for me, 48 hours is reasonable.
Okay.
That could be subjective, but I take comfort in the fact that in the Constitution, there are several examples of the application of the 48-hour rule. If you go to Article 14, for instance, when a suspect is arrested, etc., and detained, the law enforcement agencies have 48 hours within which to bring the person before a court of law. If you don't do that, you violate Article 14.3 of the Constitution. I guess the bill took a cue from the constitutional provision and thought that 48 hours is a reasonable time within which a judge ought to be approached the security coordinator takes the decision that, look,
James, I want
because time is of the essence, you would have to issue oral instructions and later on seek the confirmation.
James, I want to say thank you very much. Really, really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot, and I'm sure my viewers also appreciate that you came to explain to us what really is going on. I want to say thank you to my brother Kofi Bento. And then once again, I want to remind you that within Adumasa, our Easter celebration this year will be from the 21st of March to 28th of March. We have a series of activities which will be climaxing on the 26th of March, where all roads will be leading to Adumasa. My 5-year anniversary, we are launching the most modern Saito school in the whole of Ghana, fully air conditioned, let me add. We're going to present our master plan for the whole of Adumasa. It's all been mapped out now. The Awodanswa Reading Project and Library will also be opened. So you don't want to miss activities. And Seth Kwame Boateng will be Abakoma Hene. So you can't miss this on this Saturday, 26th of March. You should be there. Tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you.